is aging in place. And, it's a term you hear a lot. It means a lot of different things to people. In this context, the aging in place, as Gary Bavano is going to talk a lot about, is for people that really want to stay in the home they're living in. They don't want to, go to a senior living environment. They don't want to go to a skilled nursing setting. Their goal is to adapt the home that they're in, and that can be quite a process. Gary Bavano, who's a licensed occupational therapist, has been involved in this type of work for over 3 decades. So we're lucky to have somebody like Gary who's got a lot of hands-on experience helping people make these kind of modifications. And the goal is to, listen to Gary, learn about some things that are on the and have a little bit of a dialogue, hopefully an informal discussion with one another on this topic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gary and let you do your thing.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for showing up this afternoon. So I have this laid out in a certain format. Julia's going to help me with the on-screen version of this. But what I did want to take about 10 minutes to do is actually talk about one of the most important things about remaining in the home, and that's actually around your health. Okay. The biggest issue that I've looked at over the years, and many therapists who are part of the VNA system within Hampshire County, Franklin County, and the surrounding area, is we look to make sure that people are strong, healthy. They maintain ways of either exercise or walking to maintain their balance. The one thing that tends to get overlooked, it's talked about, is falls. And if you want to remain in your home, aside from doing the modifications, you also need to also look at how you're taking care of yourself to maintain that independence as long as you can, again, to remain in your home. So I'm going to read from a couple of pieces of literature and statistics that I found when I developed this presentation over a year ago. And I'm just going to run through that. Following that, we're going to go over the home safety checklist that I developed. And then after that, we're going to look at also a list of a couple of vendors in the area that carry equipment, adaptive equipment for the home. And then there are corresponding sheets that go over different types of like door hinges, furniture blocks, stuff that will help create an independent environment. And my concept has always been basically making this low cost, okay, for people that want to remain home. Again, having to retrofit your home, not new construction. And then I'm going to just briefly just show you a couple of pages on a home program that is available in the state of Massachusetts that I actually used about 10 years ago, which I was just incredibly fortunate to come across, and was very happy to find out last year that it still exists and actually has expanded outside of the Boston area, where we know things tend to grow, but they hardly get out here. But this is now in Western Massachusetts, in Franklin County, in the Berkshires, and it's a program that allows individuals to do a more extensive modification to their home, and I'll briefly touch base on that. But let's start with falls. And again, the reason I'm starting here is because this is the most important way that you can maintain your independence. So why do older adults fall? Well, there's 3 factors that contribute to falls. There's an extrinsic factor, which is poor lighting, unsecured area rugs, maybe steep steps in the home. There's an intrinsic factors, knee and hip arthritis, foot problems that you may have, or a vestibular disease, which causes imbalance. Situational factors, walking while you're talking, rushing to the bathroom or to answer the phone in your home, failing to notice steps or curbs outside the home, while we're talking to a friend or a loved one, and all of a sudden, you're face down on the sidewalk. The National Council on Aging just put out a 2023 report. In it, they said more than 1 out of 4 Americans, 1 out of 4 Americans over the age of 65 falls each year. Okay. And that's really high. That's a high percentage. And again, a lot of these factors that I just mentioned are the cause of the falls. The CDC came out with a report back in 2021 that showed a significant increase in age-related adjusted fall death rate, which increased in 41% from 53% per 100,000 persons in 2012 to as much as 78 per 100,000 adults in 2021. So again, it's going up. All right, it's not going to go down. As part of the baby boomer generation, we have so many older adults who are aging with the advent of better medical procedures, immediate care. So this number is not going to go down. If anything, it's going to go up. So it's something to be aware of. We know that hip fractures is a big issue with older adults. And surprisingly, a lot of people don't realize that part of that is caused basically through health. All right. So again, just to go over a couple of things, more than 95% of hip fractures are caused by falling, usually falling sideways. You're going to say falling sideways. That makes no sense. I usually trip forward. Well, yeah, that's one of the factors I talked about earlier, but when people tend to fracture their hips, the highest number of fractures takes place with women. And the reason it takes place with women is because of osteoporosis. And because of osteoporosis, a bone can spontaneously fracture. And if it fractures and it's your hip, you're going to go to the side that it fractures on. So again, you're falling off to the side on to that right hip or left hip. Males are not excluded from having osteoporosis, although the numbers are much less and much conservative than women. So it's something to be aware of. And the reason I bring that up about hip fractures, about osteoporosis, is the one way to help prevent or keep management of this is by seeing your physician. Okay, the most important thing you do to prevent fractures is to basically go to your physician or healthcare provider, have them evaluate your risk. All right, it's a visit. I know that they're time crunch, but if you're showing concern, they will reciprocate and provide the information that you're looking for. Some of the things that you can also do is check with your pharmacist as well as your physician. Look at the medications you're taking. If you've had a recent hospitalization and you've been discharged with medication, sometimes what happens is you get discharged with a medication that's a generic brand of what you're already taking. So now instead of taking, say, one cardiac med on a daily basis, you're taking 2. And as we know, beta blockers, which is one of the cardiac medications, will lower blood pressure. So here it is managing your blood pressure with one med. Now it's lowering it to an unsafe level with 2 medications. So you really want to keep track of that. And you also want to keep track of how you're taking your medication so that you don't run into this issue on your own. The other thing that's really important is vitamins and supplements. As we get older, we start to deplete and have deficiencies in certain vitamins, B12, folic acid, vitamin D. Vitamin D is crucial, okay? And it's crucial for bone health density and for muscle strength. So if you're not getting the proper amount of vitamin D3, okay, again, that's something you should talk to your physician about, because you want to be able to maintain the health of the bone and the strength in the muscle, which will then help you maintain your independence in the home and decrease your risk of falling. All right. You know, we've all seen the exercise programs that you can do sitting in a chair. If you're, much more mobile and, a stronger older adult, then you can do classes like Tai Chi. You can go to a gym and do a modified workout. Northampton Athletic Club happens to have a group of trainers that specialize in training with older adults. And so they can kind of look at where you're at, develop a program. You're not trying to bulk up and become this muscle man at 70, or, this incredible bodybuilder of a woman at 70, but you want to maintain the strength that you do have. And you want to keep that going as long as you can. Okay. That said, some people hate to exercise. My wife is one. She loves to swim. She's a runner, not a lot, long distance. She's modified it over time, but that's her exercise program, and that's the one she sticks with. I have a friend of mine, again, too, who can't stand to exercise. So he calls me and we go out and take walks, So if you have a spouse, a partner, or a good friend, get up off the couch, get out of the house, take a half an hour walk. Try to do that on a daily basis. Again, you're maintaining strength. You're maintaining your bone density by keeping weight on your hips, knees, ankles. That's important. And at the same time, you're getting out. We look at the whole body and mind. You want to get out of the house, you want to have a change environment, you want to hear the sounds of nature, whatever. It's actually a nice way, again, to get the exercise that you really need to maintain your independence, and also to kind of change things up a little bit out of the house. Two last pieces. One, which is, well, actually, they're both really important. Eyewear. If you have eyewear, if you wear eyeglasses, bifocals, progressive lenses, it might be to your advantage to do two things. One is to make sure that you have an annual checkup. Okay. Make sure your eyes are okay, that there's no issues coming up. The other thing is to, rather than use bifocals or graded lenses when you're outside walking, what might help or be an advantage is have your prescriber, if you can, and if you can afford to do it, give you distant lenses, okay? So that when you're walking, you're walking out, you're not getting any changes in vision. Like if you're putting your head down or you're putting your head up, as you well know, if you have bifocals or progressive lenses, that can change how you see things, which can also create falls. So, it might be worth your time to ask your provider, can you do this? How much would it cost? Do you think it's worth it? But I would check with them and find out. The next thing that really is crucial and really not talked about a lot is hearing. All right. So whether it's a mild hearing loss that you may have, or a more severe hearing loss that you may have that requires the use of hearing aids, okay, this is an area I'm going to tell everybody, don't skip. Don't go someplace and buy, there's a great deal on Amazon, $300, I get these great hearing aids. Well, unless you go see an audiologist, they're not going to be fitted to your hearing deficit, whether you have a high pitch deficit, low pitch deficit, it doesn't work, and I'm speaking from experience with a 99-year-old father who says to me, why don't you just buy me a pair of hearing aids online? I said, well, they don't work. We've tried that in the past with him because he's been really kind of set in his ways. And of course, they didn't work. The one thing I want to talk about, and I want to read this article, it's from ASHA. It's the Association of Speech, Hearing, and Audiology. And this was an article they did relating to hearing loss and falls in the elderly, and this is back in 2019. And actually, this is the earliest one I could find. So I'm just going to read from this brief. So in March 2019, they found that there are three major hypotheses for how hearing loss affects balance. So hearing loss makes people less aware of their environment so that they don't notice other people, pets, or activities going on around them. So think about it. You go into a park, it's crowded with people on a summer day. You've got kids running all over the place. If it's a park that allows dogs, you have animals going all over the place, and you're not aware of your surroundings because you really can't hear anything other than maybe the person that's talking next to you, that's right near your ear. And that can cause an issue with falling and hurting yourself. It also, in addition, the hearing loss can decrease spatial awareness. So being able to gauge where your body is in relation to objects around you, that gets trickier as you get older. All right. So, you want to be able to make sure that what you're hearing and the volume that you're hearing at is appropriate for you. Finally, the hearing loss can cause the brain to use resources for hearing and interpreting speech and sound. So fewer resources go towards gait, which is walking, and or your balance. These factors can make all of us with a hearing loss lose balance and fall. Unfortunately, hearing loss in elderly is viewed in a couple of different ways. One that really stands out is the fact that most people who have a hearing loss only tend to use their hearing aids when they go out to events, music, although it's difficult sometimes to hear that music, but events, dinner, whatever the case may be. And they neglect to use it more on a daily basis and get into that routine. That's the important piece, okay? Think about it if you use a device, a cane, or whatever. If you go out of the house without that, you're going to have problems with your balance. Well, if you go out without your hearing aids, you're not going to be able to hear what's going on around you as well. And again, you're creating more of a risk for injury down the road. So those areas are the ones that I think are important with regards to maintaining your balance, your physical health, your mental health, and thereby decreasing the chance for falls in the future. All right. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. Julia, can we go to the equipment that we
You
want?
got it. I'm going to start sharing my screen right now. So let's see.
Great, thank you. So the first page you're looking at is an organization that's been in this area for over 30 years. It's Mass Surgical Supply. There is Agawam Medical Supply as well, and that's on the sheet. And then there's Ali Med, which is a discount, provides discounts for equipment. And these are some of the equipments that they carry: commodes, grab bars, handheld showers, wheelchairs, walkers, canes, hospital beds. So, basically most of this, except for bathroom equipment, is covered by insurance, Medicare, and private insurance. Unfortunately, the only organization that I've known over the years that will cover bathroom equipment is Medicaid. I'm not sure why, but they do. Unfortunately, the other companies don't. So you are spending money out of pocket, but at the same time, it's equipment that's, again, going to help you maintain your independence. Julia, if we can forward to that Bemis toilet seat that we talked about. So I came across this new toilet seat that came out. It's got a 3-inch riser. It is one of the most secure toilet seats, raised toilet seats that I've seen in production. Normally what you have is you have a toilet seat, raised toilet seat, that secures from the inside. So you drop it out into the toilet, whether it's a round toilet or a oblong, And then there's a dial that you turn to then spread the arms out against the inside of the toilet, which is secure, which secures it. The only problem is a lot of us won't check it until it's a little bit too late, where it gets really loose and then dangerous, because you could fall off that as easily as you could fall off a toilet if it's rocking back, either forward or back and forth. What Bemis has also done, and we're going to go to the next page and show you, is they've come up with now a raised toilet seat, again, that secures to the back of the toilet frame itself, with handrails on the side to help elevate yourself from the toilet or sit back down again. But it also has a bidet feature. If you have arthritic joints, and you have a difficulty doing period care or bowel care, a bidet system is a beautiful system to have in the home. They're not super expensive. They're worth every penny. And I've recommended them to clients in the past, and it's actually worked out very well for them. And again, it helps increase that individual's independence. And then as we scroll down a little bit, just to give you a little bit of an idea, there's more toilet seats, and different type of devices. I leave that up to you. I have a preference, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's your preference. But this is what I make available to people that I've worked with in the past, and this is what's out there. We scroll down more and you can see there's going to be grab bars, and then Julia, you can just keep going as you go down. There's, things for beds, again, to help you get in and out of bed more easily, which is a great advantage. And if we could stop here, this would be great. Door hinges, which are, again, an issue because as we, get older, we require certain pieces of equipment. Well, some of these equipment will not fit in an older home because the doorways were much narrower. Some doorways as narrow as 28 inches, and then some maybe 29 or 30 inches. But what this door hinge will do is it allows the door to swing in flush to the wall so that you don't have that edge hanging out, that, you can't swing the door any further open because that's as far as the hinge goes. This gives you anywhere from 1 to 2 inches more space between the door frames themselves to be able to get either a walker or a wheelchair in. And again, it works on some homes, not on every home. In your own time, Julia's going to make this available to you. You'll be able to scroll and look at these pieces of equipment. A lot of this, believe it or not, you can pick up at Home Depot. Okay, it's not difficult to find. You can get it online. You can go, if you're mobile, you can go to Home Depot and pick out what you want. So it's out there, which is, saying a lot considering this equipment was not available for a long time. And most of the time it was provided by contractors and you couldn't get it yourself. The next thing I want to just touch base on, and we're going to go to that home program, Julia, is a home loan modification program. And this is the program that I started talking about earlier. So this is a home program that it's income based. So it looks at your income, and they have specific specifications. I don't have all the specifications for how much, what they loan versus what you have as far as your income is concerned. But what I do know is they will loan out as much as $50,000. And just to give you an example, so I was saying, like, probably close to 15 years ago, I had a patient at a skilled nursing facility I was working at. They wanted to return home. The only problem is they had significant balance issues that was caused basically by a closed head injury. There was no way to remediate that. And then the other issue was that the person themselves wasn't safe climbing stairs and didn't realize that they weren't safe climbing stairs. So, I spoke to the family. and they had this spare room that they used as a 3-season porch. So I contacted a contractor, and this is how I actually found out about the program. Is I contacted the contractor and I said, can you give us an idea of how much the renovation would cost? And he gave us a dollar figure. And they said, there's this program out there. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, this program will allow up to $50,000. And the program itself is no interest. Okay. The only thing they ask is that at the end of the program's use for you, and eventually when you get ready to sell the house, they need to have the money back, the $50,000 back, so that they can give it to someone else to use, again, to modify their home. So what they end up doing is putting a lien on the home. The lien on the home is strictly a way to guarantee that when you sell the home or when your children sell the home, that they get the $50,000 back, so that they, again, can use it for another individual and family who's in need. So it is located, as I mentioned earlier, in both Berkshire County, Franklin County, and there's a Valley Community Development Program that actually covers the communities of Hampden and Hampshire County. And those numbers and the information that you're looking for, as well as some things that they will do for you, are on the screen right now, and you can look at that later on as well, and refer back to that. So now I think what we probably should do is probably just go to the home safety list, and just spend a little time on that. Okay, so we're going to go to the first page on that. So I developed this in combination with a couple of other pieces of documentation that I've had over the years. And it's I think covers pretty much what you need to look at. This is some of these are the things I look at when I go into people's homes. Area rugs, throw rugs that are not secured. So often what I would do is recommend a 2-sided tape that you can get at Home Depot, and most hardware stores will carry it as well. And it allows you to basically adhere the carpet to the floor itself. And it's really, I ask my clients or my patients basically to do that where the most traffic is. You don't have to do it completely around the rug itself, because you're not going to walk on all edges of the carpet or ever. There's usually a path that people follow. Another important thing, because we've lived in our homes for so long, the most important thing to do is really look at what you have, what you need to have, versus what can be defined as clutter or memorabilia that limits your amount of space that you can be mobile in the home. And it's important to look at that, and it's hard to look at that as we get older, because of course they have a lot of memories, but at the same time, again, that clutter can be a real fall hazard for most people in the home. Cords and wires on the floor, you want to be able to take those, either relocate those if you can. If not, they have strips now that can hold up to 3 and 4 types of wire, whether it be an extension cord, a lamp wire, whatever. And what it does is, again, that adheres to the floor. It covers that, allows you to walk over it without catching your foot on the cord itself and tripping and falling. Chair heights easily can be remedied by what they call furniture blocks. They come in 2, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6-inch heights, depending on your height. Again, that's evaluated by whoever comes into the home, whether it be V&A or somebody maybe like myself, whatever. And that could actually help increase your independence with your transfers from your favorite chair or a couch. One thing that I recommend for people is also stop waxing your floors. Yes, they look nice, but it's like an ice skating rink. And the worst thing you can do is walk in stocking feet on flooring like that, or stairs like that for that matter. Again, it's basically like an ice skating rink. If you like to walk around barefooted, like personally I do, I don't walk with socks. I just throw on a pair of, clogs on my feet during the winter months, or a pair of sandals, or barefooted is ideally the way I like to do it. And your bare feet have much better adhesion to a floor than actually stocking feet. So you want to get away from that as much as you can. The other thing to remember is you need to have a way to communicate with somebody if something happens. And I don't mean to just go to a landline and call somebody. I mean, if you're mobile and you're moving around, if you have the ability to have a cell phone in your possession on you at all times, that's great. It makes it easier to contact somebody if you've fallen. My recommendation is when you fall, please don't call your relatives to come pick you up off the floor. Okay. Please contact emergency services, EMS. They're trained to do this. And I'll tell you why I mention this. I mention this because, again, going back to my family, I had a 94-year-old mom who passed away 5 years ago, and a 94-year-old father who insisted on taking care of my mom throughout her later years with dementia. I loved it. I loved him for it. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. But the one thing I kept saying to him is, please, when she falls, don't pick her up. Of course, what did he do? He picked her up. He ended up getting significantly hurt, requiring a brief hospitalization. And she ended up having to have care by neighbors for a day or two in the home. So the other thing that's really important, which people don't understand, is if somebody falls, unless you're a medical professional, you don't know what to assess. So they may look fine to you, okay? Even if you've witnessed the fall and you say, well, she didn't hit her head, she didn't land on her shoulders, she just landed on her butt. Okay, well, that's good. Doesn't look like she has any injuries, but if she's an older woman, she might have osteoporosis. She might have sustained a fracture that you don't know about. You try to move her, you're going to make that fracture worse. Or if they do fall, they could have internal bleeding. And if they do have internal bleeding and you're not aware of that, again, that can be a major issue as well. Let the medical professionals come in, do the assessment, make a determination whether that person needs to go to the ER and be evaluated or not. Okay. You'll sleep better. Okay. And basically so will your family members. Bathrooms, I think everybody knows. They all know about grab bars. Okay. The important thing to realize though is where they need to be located. And that really needs to be assessed based on the person who is using that grab bar. You don't want to have it at a height for somebody who's 6'4" when the person using it is 5'4", okay? Or at a certain angle that the person can't reach because they have severe arthritis of the shoulder and they don't have the ability to reach out as far as they need to. So that should be assessed again individually. Going to the outdoors. Moving down the page. Julie, thank you. Perfect. Going to the outdoors. What people don't realize is you need to look at the outside of the home as well as inside the home. And I'll tell you why. Most people don't spend 100% of their time in the home. So when you come out of the home and you have a certain path that you use all the time, check the sidewalks, all right? make sure there aren't any cracks or major rises in asphalt that could be a tripping hazard, or can be a deterrent to using a piece of adaptive equipment like a wheeled walker. That's important. Look at handrails, okay, and steps. People say, "Oh, I have handrails on my stairs." I said, "Great." I go to the house, and the problem is that the handrail's on one side of the step, but it actually needs to be on the other side of the step, which then makes it easier for the individuals to hang on to the handrail while they're reaching for the door and being able to open it away from them so that they can then enter the house. Also, handrails, or as you know, like to call a smaller grab bar, sometimes on the door frame of the main entrance that is used by everybody. So if somebody has to negotiate a step, they can pull themselves up a little bit for help. Make sure that the lighting is adequate, not just inside the home, but outside the home. And this is something I've come to recommend more often with people that I work with, is spend the money, if you can, on automatic lighting, okay, that triggers as soon as you walk in the path. If you can't afford that, always leave a light on. Even if you're gone early in the morning and you're not going to be back late at night, leave the outside light on, okay? Because when it's dark and you try to walk, I've seen so many people do this. Well, I just turn on the headlights of my car so that my wife can kind of see where she's going. Well, yeah, and that's not a great remedy, because as soon as she walks in front of the headlights are on her and she can't see anything. So make sure that the lighting is adequate. Literally from where you park the car to where you have to enter the home. And that would be, you know, for me, those are the areas that I think are really significant and important to attend to, you know, as you're trying to like modify the house, and make it so that you're able to maintain being in the home. So anyway, with that, I thought I'd kind of open this up a little bit to anybody that had any input or any questions, any thoughts on what I just said. Just feel free.
So this will be an opportunity for those of you that we can't see to join in either visually or unmute, and to feel free to ask questions. There's no bad question. And as you're thinking of a question, I'm just going to make a comment that I'm so glad, Gary, that you spent as much time as you did on balance, falls, and prevention in a sense, or proactive, you know, this, you know, I too, like Gary, I spent a lot of time with older adults in my work life before I retired. And this was the key. This was the key to the downfall. The fall itself so often was, you know, the beginning of the nightmare. So to the extent you listen carefully to what Gary was talking about in terms of what you can do within your own lifestyle to try to improve your balance and awareness of what's around you, it's critical. And then you took it, you know, your home safety list, you kind of took that thinking into the house. Like, what, you know, you think everything's fine, but did you know that throw rug is a bad idea, especially, you know, if you're looking at your cell phone while you're walking, or, you know, not paying attention. So that proactive way of thinking, in terms of your environment and yourself to minimize falls was great. I'm so glad you spent time on that. What else are people curious about? Jean, I can see your hand.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you about something that we got, which we love, but ask your opinion about it as well, you know, whether you think it's a good idea. So with winters here, you never know when you walk out the door, whether it's going to be, you know, a bunch of ice, whatever on your steps or patios or whatever. We got something called Heat Trax, TRAX, Heat Trax, and they plug in and they go on the deck or on steps or whatever, and they stay warm enough to keep the ice and snow and so on off. So we always have a clear path to get to our garage, which is separate from the house. I wondered if, number one, if you know anything about them, and number two, if you think they're a good idea.
I think they're a good idea. I have not heard about them, to be honest. Normally what I've recommended is something similar to that when people have had to have a wheelchair ramp or a ramp put in
Yeah.
to the home. I usually make a specification for them to either have it shielded over the top to prevent snowfall. There are heat cables that you can actually put under on the underside of a ramp that will actually, you know, help keep the snow or the ice at a minimum. But no, the heat tracks I haven't. Can I ask where you got them?
We found them online, and we'd heard about them, and it's HEAT, and then I think it's TRAX, and you can get them in different lengths and widths, but then you can attach them. So we have several, some going down, you know, some for the steps. We have three
Yep.
steps, so they're step size ones, and then ones that are different lengths for the distance we have to go.
How do
And
they
they've been a lifesaver. We've had them about 3 years now.
Good, perfect, perfect. Do they secure to the step in any way, or is it?
They're heavy rubber, so they
Okay,
don't
good.
usually move much,
Yeah.
and they connect to each other electrically, so that
Okay.
you plug them in someplace, you know, wherever you've got an outdoor plug or make an indoor plug, and then you just get the ones you need for your particular distance. So we have the 3 steps, and they are long. I'd say they're 3 feet long, maybe,
Yeah.
and then a step wide, and then others of different sizes to fit whatever you need.
Okay, so the only recommendation I would make to you, it's kind of an addition to that. So they have
Yeah.
non-skid strips that they have a texture to them. And I would actually take that and put the strips across the steps, okay, because they're 3 feet wide. And I put those strips across each step, maybe 2 on each step, and then put the
Yeah.
mats on that. So that you have, again, you have a friction barrier that could help prevent that rubber from sliding in any way. All right.
Okay,
Other
good
than
idea.
that,
Thank you.
yeah, other than that, I would say that's great. I like the idea a lot. So when I mentioned the falls earlier and I mentioned the statistics, please understand, those are national statistics. Massachusetts is much higher in fall rate. And you can, I mean, New England is higher in fall rate. Maine is even higher than we are. Again, it's the black ice that nobody sees. It's the uneven snow that freezes, okay, or that you try to negotiate and you slip and fall. So yeah, I love the idea. I'm gonna look it up when I get off and just see. How about anybody else? Has anybody done any home modifications at all? Cost effective, one way or the other, or maybe not cost effective?
Audrey,
Yeah, I have done a number of the things you've mentioned and have found them really important. My son, who's a doctor, and my granddaughter, who's a OT, and her husband, who's a PT, visited me a year and a half ago, and they went through my house and
I bet they did.
and even to the point of moving me out of my loft. I live on the first floor, but I have a loft where my TV was and my desk and all my work stuff and my comfortable couch and everything. So I was carrying a tray up the stairs for my dinners, and they just about flipped out when they heard that. So
I bet. I do have. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I love the double team. That works.
Yeah.
And I think also too, that I like the fact that they were really looking at everything thoroughly and closely. You know, V&A services that come into the home are invaluable in this community. I've got several colleagues who still work for the VA in Northampton, and I love the work they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're kind of time limited and they don't have the amount of time, or they don't know that person as well as your children know you. And so, you know, for them, it's advantage to you and it's an advantage to them. They get a chance, they've been in the home, they can look at things much more thoroughly, spend an extended period of time, which sometimes the VNA can't do, which I feel bad about. But again, it's time limited because of reimbursement. But it's great. I'm glad to see that you were able to get all that done and stay in the home. I think that's a great
Well,
thing.
Sort of the opposite of that is I live in the co-housing community.
Mhm.
We're 30 years older than when we moved in, and a lot of things were put in when we moved here and when none of us knew we were going to get old. But I have found since the several falls of my own,
Mhm.
I've become aware of so many things here that are dangerous. And I can't get people excited or interested or aware of how dangerous things are. And so there's just seems to be this denial of aging going on with younger people that prevent us from living safely. And I would be interested in some help with that issue or suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah. So here's the thing. Mention hip fracture. As Larry was saying, and this is really what stands out. There are people think that they can fracture a hip, go through rehab, and they're all set and ready to go. What they don't realize is there's a significant number of persons who then have a hip fracture and don't return home.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they can't live independently any longer. All right. Either they have an issue with how they walk or they don't have the strength to stand any longer. They could have complications from the hip fracture, nerve damage, depending on how the fracture took place. So just let them know that, if they really love their home, okay, they really want to avoid hip fractures. They really want to avoid any type of injury. Hip fracture, shoulder fracture. I've seen people fall and say, well, I didn't fracture my hip, but I fractured my shoulder. And I said, okay. And they said, but I can't use my arm. And I said, I know, and now I can't live alone until I'm healed, which is 10 to 12 weeks. Well, where do you go? All right. So remind your friends, I'm telling you this because I don't want to have to see you go to a hospital and not be able to come back home again. All right. It's something I always tell I tell my clients as well. Really.
Yeah, and Audrey's in the co-housing, so there's quite an age range in that setting. So it's even more challenging when you're in your own home and you're with older adults who are getting the issues that are being talked about. It's a little easier to get people on board.
Right.
It's a
Right.
good challenge that you have there, Audrey, in terms of educating and the old there, but for the grace of God go I, like everybody takes a turn on this stuff. Your turn will come. I'm dealing with it now, you want them to know, and you would love more empathy and awareness of some of the physical environmental things that you see that are potential hazards, particularly for falls. Who else has a question that they want, and or if you're uptight about putting your hand up, you could also ask it in the chat and we could read it for you. And
I have a comment, Larry,
yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
may. As a volunteer for Amherst Neighbors, I do want to share with everyone what I've observed. And this was from a lady in her mid-90s whose grandkids and great-grandkids would come for a visit. And the daughter would always make sure that the grandkids and the great-grandkids would put everything back in place
Mhm.
because this lady who was 96 years old was already used to where the chairs were, where her little stool was, where everything was located. So it was so important for the great-grandkids and the grandchildren to put everything where it belonged because she was used to it. Her body was aware of where everything was, so it was not fair for them to move stuff around. She had to relearn it, and that could have cause an accident. So I just thought I would mention that I became aware of that when I volunteered and did friendly visits for her.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, Julia. It's really important. You know, I even told, my friends, who as they've gotten a little bit older have gotten a little bit lax. So they'll drop a jacket off on the floor, while they run in the house. I'm like, yeah, that's not a really good idea, because if somebody comes in and it's a jacket, but can you trip over it? Absolutely. Or a pair of shoes in a spot where they normally aren't. You turn to take a step, next thing you know, you're tripping over a pair of shoes. So yeah, it is really important. And you're right. People get used to knowing exactly where everything is. And in most cases, some of these people can go through the house with their eyes closed and know exactly where everything is. So that's a good thing. It is a good thing.
So I have two questions, brief, that you could maybe comment on. I use the example because in our house, the main bedrooms and the main bathrooms are on the second floor. I think about this because our neighbor across the street had some serious health challenges, and same situation there, and how they, ended up having to do some serious modification. What about these chairs that you sit in and electronically go up a set of stairs? Are they stable? Are they,
Stair chairs? Yeah.
things to be looking at, or not?
Yeah, they are actually. There's a vendor out in Boston who does a lot of work in this area, and he's amazing. He'll go into the house, he'll come out, he'll do a walkthrough, he'll let you know exactly if it's something that will fit in your stairwell. In most cases, I think in all the years that I've used him, I think there's only one home that he could not put a stair chair in. Way too many angles, not enough wall space at all to anchor to. But yes, they're incredibly secure. I actually made a recommendation about 6 months ago. A client of mine had, and here's the other thing, before we just continue further, I'm not against people climbing stairs. Don't get me wrong. And in all honesty, it's not taboo. But if you're not aware of your physical abilities, and if you're not aware of how things are changing as you age, okay, and you're not acknowledging that things are changing as you age, that's when stairs become a problem. Okay, in all honesty, they do. Okay. And in the case before of somebody climbing a set of stairs with a tray in their hand, I don't recommend it, or a laundry basket. Again, there's modifications that can prevent all that, where you're just climbing the stairs as you normally would climb stairs. But back to the stair chair. Yes, it's an incredible gift to many people who have multiple level homes. I had a client out in the Berkshires who had a playroom downstairs where her husband, who has been deceased for many years, accumulated all his architectural drawings and designs. She was trying to organize that. She's up on the next level up, the living space, and then her bedroom was up on the third floor. So I said to her, I said, listen, if you really want to stay in this home, the only way you're going to do this is a stair chair. So I had the guy come in, he made the recommendations, he gave her the prices on those, and they're not too bad when you think about what it allows you to do. Okay, some of these can go for $3,000, some can go for much more. But again, if you don't have the ability to retrofit your home, and you need to be upstairs because you don't have the space downstairs for a bedroom or a full bath, then it's worth a $3,000 investment. And that might be something, again, that this home modification program can cover for you. Okay, so you might want to look into that. Anyway, she uses those, or she did, I'm sorry, she did until she recently passed away. So she had one going from her bedroom to her living room, and then one going from the living room down to the space downstairs. So it kept her independent. She was 99 years old. Okay. And she basically went through the entire house to help organize it for her children down the road. And fortunately, you know, it turned out fine.
Do you know the name of the vendor? Somebody was asking for the name of that Boston area vendor for the stair chair.
I don't know if I have it in my phone contacts. I know I have it in my office upstairs. I can get it. If you can give me
Well-
2 seconds.
While you're looking for that, I just wanted to mention that there is a gentleman in the area who will purchase stair chairs that people no longer need.
Uh-huh.
They've moved or passed on or something. He
Mhm.
refurbishes them and then installs them at a much cheaper price than new ones.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's, I heard about that and talked with a gentleman after fracturing an ankle when I couldn't put any weight on it at all for weeks. And like you were saying, you know, all of the bedrooms and full baths are upstairs.
Right, right. So let me ask you a question. This refurbishing, does he have does a guarantee come with it?
I didn't get to that level of detail.
Okay. All right. So here's the only thing, and that's great, but here's the only thing I recommend too, is you want to make sure that if you're buying a piece of used equipment, that there is some type of guarantee that goes with it. Okay, because it can be incredibly costly to then have this repaired out of pocket. Okay, whereas if you're buying it brand new, you may be spending $3,000, but then you have a year warranty that will cover the labor or cover the parts or cover one or the other. You know, over a period of time. All right. I mean, I love the fact that you were able to get that refurbished and, you know, that whole bit, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
never actually installed it. I got pretty skillful at crawling up the stairs.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. A little butt walking as we say sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. I can get that name.
Yeah, when, you know, for those that, just to clarify, for those that would like a copy of some of the information you saw when we were sharing the screen, if you put your email in the chat, as Julia had mentioned, we can make sure that we get that to you. And you can just shoot us an email with the vendor, and we can pass that on to people as well.
Sounds great.
For the Boston. The other question I had, equipment related, there's some controversy. You referenced bars for people that need bars on their bed to get in and out of bed
Correct.
to help transfer versus bed rails, you know, bars versus bed rails, maybe to clarify that, because there's been controversy of people getting caught up in their bed rails, at least in institutional settings. So just to clarify the better ones to be using.
Yeah, well, our history together, you know that it happens. You know, bed rails and stuff are in fact they've been a hazard for a while. And when I was in a skilled nursing facility, you could no longer use bed rails. You know, pretty much most facilities do not allow you to use bed rails, or they only allow you to use half rails. And there's a lot of monitoring and assessments, both from physical therapy and occupational therapy, to even know if they're even safe or not. The bed bar I'm talking about is basically a U shape. Okay, it's not a rail that goes across the side of a bed. What you want is you want to have a U-shaped bar that goes on or near the head of the bed. There are 2 types. One is one that actually secures to a metal frame bed, so you have to be careful which one you're looking at. The other one mounts to a wood frame bed itself, and they're great. I mean, they're great for transfers. They're great for bed mobility. One of the hardest things to do is sometimes to get out of bed, especially if you've had a fractured hip. Okay, then you want that assistance to be able to roll to your side and then swing your legs over. So yeah, I highly recommend the bed bars, but definitely kind of a U shape or type, not a full rail or half rail.
Right.
Anybody
Any
else have
other-
any?
Anybody that questions that folks have, either many of you we can't see if you're raising your hand, it would be an opportunity to ask that now.
So I noticed there's 7 in the chat, Larry. Did you see that?
I do, and they are mostly people who put in their emails for us to send them a copy of your material.
Okay. Okay.
There's some comments like, session was super helpful, that kind of, there's some comments, but I don't see any other questions other than getting a copy of the documents.
Okay.
So I
So-
think we're good. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted Gary to address that would be helpful for you? Barbara, go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm seeing a woman whose house is really, really unsafe. And I came in late, so you may have covered this, but I'm not enough in saying this is unsafe because there's the yes, but if she could have somebody come in and look or whatever, she might be willing to do that. She was concerned that the government would get involved, just, where does this information go, which, I can understand. So, is this tape being something that can be, I said, go to this Amherst Neighbors tape, this whole session, or is there something else I can pass on to her?
Well, both, just so I can clarify everybody that this is recorded, as most of our presentations are. And then by tomorrow at some point, it'll be on our website in an area that we refer to as Amherst Neighbors YouTube videos. So that individual to look at this. And Gary, this is what he does a lot. He goes to people's homes and helps make these assessments. So if this person is concerned and wants a professional, who this is, part of his craft as an occupational therapist, it's life skill. It's in this case, there's nothing more fundamental than the safety of your own home. I can't think of anything more, bottom line. So the question is, and to reassure, of course, that this doesn't go to any governmental anybody. This is about, it's an extension of just, you take yourself to the doctor if you didn't feel well. Well, if your home isn't quite right and you're worried about that, having somebody come in and sometimes simple modifications might keep that person in their home longer than they would otherwise.
Well, this is very helpful because I had suggested all I knew, and then I reached out to Amherst Neighbor to say, help, what do I suggest? That I had suggested Stavros, which is, I don't know whether that's appropriate or not. So I'm glad I have, resources now.
Yeah, Stavros is an agency, and Larry knows of Stavros from actually decades ago. But they tend to work with individuals with significant physical disabilities. And you normally need to be a client of theirs as
Okay.
well prior. That said, it's good to take the time. A lot of these modifications, I mean, the whole reason I got into this is a lot of these modifications are really cost effective. And easily financed by individuals, even on Social Security. We're not talking about extravagant expenses here. We're talking about simple fixes that then make the home safer to be mobile in. All right. And again, it's yeah.
I just have one more thing. You had mentioned, carrying a phone, which I always do when I go into the woods, but the rest of the time, I don't have any pockets. Women don't have pockets. It's a problem.
Right.
So I'm thinking, it's been recommended to me, Apple Watch or the equivalent. And that I just throw that out as a possibility.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, sure. Apple Watch is something you can do. You can also do. There's a Lifeline that people have used and continue to use. Some have pendants that hang from their neck, others have a wrist.
And they're always hanging somewhere else, right? That's my
Well, right.
experience with those.
Right, exactly. That's why I never really recommend the pendant, but I do recommend the wristband. It's like a wristwatch. If you
Oh,
wear,
okay.
then you have that. And what's nice about that is it contacts emergency services right off the bat. As soon as something happens, you hit that button, you know, they'll have a voice response. If you don't respond to them, they send somebody out. And even if you do respond to them and say, listen, I fell, I'm injured, they'll respond. It's this kind of immediate kind of contact. I don't know much about the Apple Watch unless you can trigger it and basically set it up so it contacts 911. That's a great option. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me again about the watch, I mean, the company or whatever.
Oh, like Lifeline.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah. And most of them hook up, most of them connect either to EMTs, EMS, or hospitals directly. Yeah, one of the two. So,
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I haven't even thought about it because I don't know what the rental fees or the lease fees are on the Lifeline. I assume you pay a monthly fee.
right.
And functionally, the Apple Watch, which is also a wristband, it's, you know,
Right.
where you can communicate by voice, you can communicate by typing, you can communicate by whatever, you know, is about 15 to 20 bucks a month. So you know, whether that's in the ballpark for what Lifeline, you know, it jump starts off of your cell phone, which most people have a cell phone, but again, you know, we have a growing list of people out of our 630 members that don't have a computer. They may or may not have a cell phone there, you know, so but most people do. So that is one approach to feeling like you could reach out if you had fallen and can't get up. Go ahead,
I
Judy.
think it's half the price.
Go ahead.
Judy, Judy, you're now not muted.
For those of us who do like to go into the woods, having that Apple Watch is just wonderful. My Apple Watch is programmed by my children to call 911 and them. If I have a fall and if I don't answer it, it goes ahead and does that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you find it covers you throughout wherever you're hiking? That doesn't seem to be an issue, or?
So far, I have found that I haven't actually, I haven't gone to check whether how it's working when I've been further away, but on my kind of daily walks, it is, yes.
Good. Glad. Yeah, I know where I am right now, to be honest with you, I ended up getting a landline because my cell phone doesn't work in my house. I have plaster walls, I have tin ceilings, I have the worst possible reception you can imagine. And every time I tried to talk to somebody, they kept saying, I can't hear you. And I'm walking outside trying to get reception. So you just want to make sure that you have the coverage that way. Yeah. Yeah.
All
All right.
Any last comments from anybody? This will be your opportunity. Going once, going twice. Well, this has been a good hour and a quarter, Gary. I'm so pleased that, you know, we could make this happen, and it's a very practical conversation to be having. It's good to be proactive. It's good to be thoughtful on all the things that you talked about. So Amherst Neighbors says thank you to you and for sharing your time with us and your expertise.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time. I just want to let people know.
Yeah, now as you leave, it'll take 30 seconds. I no more. There's about 3 or 4 questions as you leave Zoom for those of you that would give us a little bit of feedback on the session. They're very quick responses. It's helpful for us to give feedback to our speakers and for us to learn what's working. And there's opportunities to suggest other conversations that you'd like to have. So as you leave, please take the 30 seconds it would take to do that, and we would appreciate that. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia.